The message arrived at the Galactic Council chambers during a routine session about trade disputes. 3 months of absolute silence from the Sol system had finally broken, but not in the way anyone expected. Reese, a Quellan investigator known for his careful methods, studied the transmission with growing concern. His silver skin rippled with unease as he replayed it for the 5th time. "Do not approach Sol. Do not investigate our silence. This is not a distress call. Stay away for your own survival." 12 words. Nothing more. The transmission repeated on every frequency humanity had ever used, then stopped. The entire human civilization, spread across dozens of colonies and hundreds of stations, had gone completely dark 3 months ago. No trade ships. No diplomatic channels. No scientific exchanges. Just silence. And now this warning. The council members argued among themselves. The Vryn delegation insisted it was a hoax or a power grab. The plenary suggested quarantine protocols. The Hevelin trade guilds worried about their investments in human territories. Nobody could agree on what the silence meant, but most refused to take the warning seriously. Reese had studied humanity for 2 decades. They were loud, ambitious, and sometimes reckless, but never cryptic. They announced their intentions clearly, often too clearly for diplomatic comfort. This silence felt wrong in a way that made his analytical mind spin through possibilities, each worse than the last. He assembled a small investigation team against the vocal protests of several council members. They took a mid-sized vessel equipped with every sensor the galaxy had developed. If something had happened to humanity, the council needed to know. If humanity was trying to hide something, they needed to know that too. The warning, Reese decided, was probably just human paranoia about some minor threat they had overreacted to. The journey to Sol took 16 days. During that time, they detected nothing unusual. No debris fields. No signs of warfare. No radiation signatures that would indicate weapons of mass destruction. Space around the human territories looked exactly as it should, except for the absence of any electromagnetic signals. When they reached the outer monitoring stations that humanity had built at the edge of their system, Reese felt the first real stirring of fear. The stations were intact and operational, their fusion reactors humming with power. But they had been modified. Every sensor array had been physically rotated to point inward, toward Earth and the inner planets. The communication dishes had been disconnected entirely. His team docked with the largest station. Inside, they found it abandoned but not damaged. Food sat in storage. Personal items remained in crew quarters. Everything suggested a planned evacuation, not a panicked flight. The station's logs told a strange story. 74 days ago, human deep space telescopes detected an anomaly in the outer system. The entries were technical and calm at first, describing an object of unusual mass moving in an irregular pattern. Then the entries became urgent. 2 colonial vessels, the Meridian and the Pacific Star, had changed course to investigate the anomaly. Both ships maintained regular communication with Earth. During their approach, then both ships stopped transmitting simultaneously. Their last messages were identical. A burst of telemetry data showing massive gravitational distortions, then nothing. No distress calls. No emergency beacons. Just instant silence. Reese felt his breathing tubes constrict as he read further. Humanity had sent 3 more ships to investigate. Those ships never even got close to the anomaly. They simply vanished from sensors, their signals cutting off one by one as they entered the outer system. 5 ships gone in 3 days. That was when Earth made the decision. Every human facility received the same order. Cease all electromagnetic transmissions immediately. Redirect all sensors inward, and wait. The logs showed careful planning. They had evacuated outer stations in a specific sequence, moving people toward Earth while leaving systems operational but silent. They had modified their monitoring network to watch for something coming from outside. The final log entry was from the station commander, written in text rather than recorded. "We don't know what it is. We don't know if going silent will work. But every ship it takes is following our signals. If it tracks electromagnetic radiation, then we cannot lead it to the rest of the galaxy. Earth has chosen silence. If you're reading this, you've ignored our warning. May your species forgive us for what follows." Reese gathered his team. They stood in the empty station, surrounded by abandoned posts and silent equipment. The evidence was clear. Humanity had encountered something dangerous and had chosen isolation over asking for help. They had gone dark to protect not just themselves, but everyone else. "We continue to Earth," Reese announced, though uncertainty filled his voice. "They're still there. The planet is still inhabited. We need answers." His second officer, a young Quellan named Nira, gestured at the modified sensors. They pointed everything inward. "They're watching for something coming from outside. What if we lead it to them?" "We're already here," Reese said quietly. "If something is tracking our signals, it's too late to turn back. We need to know what humanity is hiding from." The team returned to their ship and set course for Earth. Behind them, the abandoned station continued its silent watch. Sensors pointed toward the inner system, waiting for something to arrive from the darkness between stars. And somewhere in that darkness, something vast registered the new electromagnetic signals. The fresh noise in the silent sector, and began to move. The investigation team traveled deeper into the Sol system, unaware that their very presence, their active sensors and communication systems, had just painted a target on the entire region. Earth's warning had been clear. They should have listened. Earth hung in the view screen like a blue marble wrapped in silence. No satellites blinked with navigation lights. No communication traffic filled the usual frequencies. The planet that had once broadcast more signals than any other world in the galaxy now sat as quiet as a tomb. But it was not dead. Reese could see city lights on the night side. Contained and dim, not the usual blazing glow that human settlements produced. They were rationing. Light itself, the approach to Earth took 6 hours of careful navigation through a maze of disabled defense platforms and dormant satellites. Each piece of technology they passed had been deliberately shut down but left intact, as if humanity planned to wake it all up again someday. Reese sent dozens of hails on every frequency humans had ever used. No response came when they finally broke through the atmosphere and descended toward what their charts identified as a military coordination center in North America. They found the landing field lit only by chemical flares. No radar guided them in. No radio controllers managed their descent. Just lights on the ground and their own sensors keeping them from crashing. The moment their landing struts touched down, 6 ground vehicles surrounded their ship. Armed humans emerged, their weapons pointed but not firing. Waiting, Reese took a deep breath and opened the main hatch. A man approached, flanked by security personnel. He wore a simple uniform with no rank insignia, and his face carried the exhaustion of someone who had not slept properly in weeks. His eyes held something worse than tiredness, though. They held the weight of terrible knowledge. "I'm Owen Grant, Earth Defense Coordination," the man said without any formal greeting. "You ignored our warning. Why?" Reese descended the ramp slowly, keeping his movements careful and non-threatening. "I am Reese of the Galactic Council Investigation Division. Your entire civilization went silent. We had to determine what happened." Owen actually laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. "What happened? We saved your lives. We saved everyone's lives. And you've just undone all of it." "I don't understand," Reese said, though dread was forming in his chest. "Of course you don't. Come with me." Owen turned without waiting for agreement and walked toward the largest building. Reese gestured for his team to follow. Inside, They descended 5 levels underground into a facility that buzzed with quiet activity. Humans worked at stations using only screens, no audio communication. Everyone moved with purpose but spoke in whispers when they spoke at all. The entire place felt like a held breath. Owen led them to a secure room where 3 walls displayed maps of the solar system. The 4th wall showed something else. A tracking display with dozens of red markers scattered across the outer reaches of the system, each one labeled with a ship name or station designation. Reese recognized some of them. The Meridian, the Pacific Star, 3 other vessels, all marked with a single word, lost. 74 days ago, we detected something in the outer system, Owen began, his voice flat with forced calm. We call it the Listener. That's not its real name. We don't know if it has a name. We don't know what it is. We only know what it does. Owen tapped a control and the display changed. Gravitational data filled the screens, showing distortions that should not exist in normal space. It responds to electromagnetic signals. Radio, radar, communications, anything we broadcast. It moves toward the source. And when it arrives, it feeds. Reese felt his skin go pale. Feeds on what? Everything. Owen's hand trembled slightly as he brought up another file. The Meridian sent back 30 seconds of data before it died. We've studied those 30 seconds for 2 months. The Listener exists partially outside our dimensional space. It reaches through reality and pulls matter apart at the molecular level. It doesn't destroy ships. It consumes them, atomizes them, absorbs every particle. The display showed sensor readings that made no sense to Reese, mass readings that fluctuated impossibly, energy signatures that violated known physics, brief visual data of something vast and dark that seemed to shift in and out of visible reality. 5 ships, Owen continued. 5 ships we sent to investigate or evacuate before we understood the pattern. Each one was transmitting normal operational signals. Each one drew it closer. That's when we realized what we were dealing with. Why didn't you warn the Council? Reese demanded. Why go silent? Owen's expression hardened. Because every message we send, every transmission we make, every signal we broadcast gives it another path to follow. Don't you understand? The Listener doesn't just find the source. It follows the signals back through space like breadcrumbs. Every relay station, every communication hub, every world that received our message would become a target. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of electronics. Reese processed the implications, his analytical mind racing through scenarios. You went dark to protect the rest of the galaxy. We went dark to avoid leading a cosmic predator straight to every inhabited world in known space, Owen corrected. Earth is isolated. Most human colonies are on the frontier. If the Listener consumed us, it would hit a dead end. No more signals to follow. It would drift back into deep space or find some other prey. But if we called for help, if we broadcast distress signals, if we told everyone what we found, we would have painted a map directly to the core worlds. How do you know it's still out there? Mira asked from behind Reese. Owen's face went even more pale. He tapped another control and the tracking display updated. A new marker appeared, much closer to Earth than before. It was labeled simply, Unknown Contact. Because, Owen said quietly, it's following your ship's signals. It's already changed course. You've been broadcasting active sensors and communication beams since you entered the system. And now it knows there's more prey here. You led it straight to us. The room suddenly felt very cold. Reese stared at the marker on the display, watching as the computer updated its position estimate. Moving inward. Moving toward Earth. Moving toward his ship and the signals it had been sending for hours. How long? Reese whispered. At its current speed, based on how it moved when hunting our ships, 4 days. Maybe 5. Owen met Reese's eyes, and the Quellen saw anger there, bitter and exhausted. You ignored our warning. Now we all pay the price. Reese spent the next 6 hours in a state of controlled horror. Owen had taken him deeper into the facility, through corridors lined with makeshift barracks where off-duty personnel slept in shifts. Everyone moved with quiet efficiency, speaking only when necessary. This was a world learning to survive in silence. The data center occupied the lowest level of the complex. Inside, 36 researchers worked at stations displaying gravitational sensors, optical telescopes, and passive detection systems. Everything designed to observe without broadcasting. Owen brought Reese to a large holographic display at the center of the room. This is everything we know about the listener, Owen said, gesturing at the display. 2 months of observation from hiding. We watch it, but we don't send active sensors at it. We track its gravitational shadow and hope it doesn't notice us watching. The display showed a 3-dimensional map of the outer solar system. A dark mass moved between the orbits of the outer planets, its path irregular but purposeful. When Owen replayed its movement over time, Reese saw the pattern clearly. It had arrived from outside the system moving in a straight line. Then the meridian changed its course to investigate. The listener changed direction to intercept. When the Pacific Star adjusted course, the listener shifted again. It was hunting signals following electromagnetic breadcrumbs. It doesn't move fast by galactic standards, Owen explained. Nothing near light speed. But it doesn't need to be fast. It's patient. And once it locks onto a signal source, it follows that path obsessively until it feeds or the signal stops. What happens when the signal stops? Nira asked. Owen pulled up another data file. We tested that. 3 weeks ago, we used one of our disabled satellites and gave it a brief power burst. 30 seconds of active transmission, then complete shutdown. The listener changed course immediately, heading for the satellite's location. When it arrived and found nothing broadcasting, it searched the area for 6 hours using gravitational pulses. We recorded those pulses. It was actively looking for the signal source. The recording showed strange ripples in space around where the satellite had been. The listener had reached through reality itself, searching for prey that had vanished. Eventually it moved on, Owen continued. It drifted back to its search pattern, sweeping through the outer system. But here's what terrifies us. He zoomed the display to show the listener's overall path. It's not just searching randomly. It's quartering the system like a predator working the hunting ground. It knows there's prey here. It's just trying to find where we're hiding. Reese felt his breathing tubes constrict. How many of these things exist? We don't know. We've only detected one in our system. But humanity monitors radio signals from across the galaxy, searching for other civilizations. 3 years ago, we noticed something odd. Several regions of space that were rich with signals suddenly went silent over periods of weeks or months. We thought it was natural disasters or wars. Now we have another explanation. The implications crashed over Reese like a wave. It's not unique. There are more of them, hunting across the galaxy. We think so. And we think they're attracted to noise, to civilizations that broadcast their presence. The louder you are, the faster they find you. Owen's hands clenched into fists. Do you understand now? Your council, your trade networks, your communication relays spanning hundreds of star systems. They're all dinner bells ringing in the darkness. You're announcing your locations to predators you didn't know existed. One of the researchers called out, her voice tight with stress. Director Grant, we have a development. Owen moved to her station. Reese followed. The display showed their tracking data on the listener. It had changed course again, its path now pointing directly toward the inner system. Toward Earth, toward the investigation ship still parked on the surface, broadcasting its location beacon. It's detected your ship, Owen said flatly. It's coming here now. 4 days, maybe less. Turn off our beacon, Reese ordered his crew members immediately. Too late, the researcher said. It's already locked on. Even if you go dark now, it knows this location had signals. It will come to investigate. Owen turned to face Reese, and the anger in his eyes had transformed into something worse. Resignation. This is what we tried to prevent. This is why we warned you to stay away. Now the listener will come to Earth, and when it arrives, if we're still broadcasting anything, it will consume this planet and everyone on it. We have to evacuate, Nira said quickly. Get everyone off Earth before it arrives. To where? Owen asked, his voice sharp. Every ship we launch will need navigation systems, communications, life support broadcasts. Every signal we make tells the listener there's more prey. We evacuate Earth, and it follows us to wherever we go. Then to wherever those ships came from. Then to every destination in their navigation computers. We don't save anyone. We just spread the infection. Reese felt the weight of what he had done settling on his shoulders. His investigation, his refusal to trust humanity's warning, had doomed the very people he meant to check on. There must be something we can do. Some way to fight it. We've been trying, Owen said, his exhaustion showing through. We have weapons. We have the best technology humanity has developed. But how do you fight something that exists partially outside our reality? How do you destroy something that feeds on energy itself? We've run simulations. Every weapon we fire just gives it more to consume. The room fell silent except for the quiet beeping of sensors tracking the approaching entity. On the display, the listener moved steadily inward, drawn by signals it had detected, heading toward a world that had tried so hard to hide. Humanity's sacrifice, their choice to go silent and isolated to protect the galaxy, was about to be wasted. Reese looked at the humans working their stations, still trying to find answers even as doom approached. They had not panicked. They had not fled. Even knowing something vast and hungry was coming, they continued working, searching for solutions. He had studied humanity for decades, but he had never truly understood them until now. There is one possibility, Owen said quietly, his eyes on the display. It's risky. It might doom us all. But it's the only option I see that doesn't end with the listener following breadcrumbs to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Tell me, Reese said. The Galactic Council chamber erupted into chaos. Reese stood at the central platform, his report displayed on every screen, while delegates from 40 species shouted over each other. He had transmitted everything via courier ship, the old-fashioned way, carrying physical data storage rather than broadcasting signals. The journey had taken 12 days while the listener crept closer to Earth. This is clearly human deception, the Vryn military commander Talus declared, his scales flushed red with anger. They want to control galactic communication networks for their own purposes. Why would they voluntarily isolate themselves if this was about control? Reese countered. They stopped trading, stopped communicating, accepted economic collapse. For what gain? A plenary delegate gestured dismissively. We have no proof this entity exists beyond human testimony and sensor data they provided. Convenient that we cannot verify their claims without approaching their system, which they warn us not to do. 3 outer colonies have already gone silent, Reese said, his voice rising. The same way Earth did. No distress calls. No warnings. Just instant silence across all frequencies. That is your proof. The chamber quieted slightly. The missing colonies were undeniable fact, not speculation. But the Hevelin Trade Guild representative spoke up, her voice cold with calculation. Shutting down the galactic communication network would collapse our economy. Trillions of credits and transactions happen every day. Supply chains would break. Worlds would starve. You're asking us to accept certain catastrophe based on possible threat, Owen Grant watched this via recorded transmission from Earth. He sat in the underground command center, face haggard as the council debated. His message had been clear. Implement a coordinated communications blackout immediately. Evacuate outer worlds using only short-range optical signals, and prepare for long-term silent running. Most delegates thought he was insane. We need more evidence, a Quellan council member insisted. Send another investigation team with proper military escort. If this listener is real, we'll engage it and assess its capabilities. That would be suicide, Reese said flatly. And it would draw the entity directly to wherever that fleet came from. Every ship you send creates a path for it to follow. Then what do you propose? Talus demanded. That we simply go dark and hope humanity is telling the truth? Reese had no answer that would satisfy them. He could see it in their faces, the refusal to accept a threat they could not see or understand. They wanted proof, but the only proof would be more dead worlds. His report included everything Owen had shared, the tracking data, the sensor recordings, the evidence of the listener's hunting pattern. But data could be faked. Testimony could be lies. And the cost of believing was enormous. While the council argued, the listener reached the outer colonies. The first world to die was called Haven, a small mining settlement with 2,000 inhabitants. They had received warnings, but, like the council, they debated and delayed. The last transmission from Haven was not a distress call. It was a 3-word message, "Oh gods no." Then silence. The second world went dark 6 hours later. Then the third. News spread through the galactic network faster than the listener could travel, and suddenly the debate changed. Fear replaced skepticism. The evidence was no longer theoretical. Talus took control of the situation with military efficiency. Emergency protocols. All worlds within 50 light-years of the affected zone are to cease long-range transmissions immediately. Use optical communication only, short-range, system-to-system. Begin evacuations inward toward core worlds. But there was a problem. To coordinate evacuations, to send warnings, to manage the logistics of moving billions of people, they needed communications. Every order they sent created signals. Every warning broadcast told the listener where to go next. And it was learning. Owen had predicted this. He sat in Earth's command center watching gravitational sensors track the listener's new behavior. It no longer moved in straight lines towards signal sources. It had learned to anticipate, to predict where signals would lead. It was heading toward the core worlds, toward the densest concentration of civilizations, even though those worlds had started going dark. It's not just following current signals, Owen told his team. It's following the pattern of where signals have been. It knows prey lives in clusters. It's heading for the center of our civilization. The data was undeniable. The listener was tracking the galaxy's communication network like a roadmap, even as that network fell silent piece by piece. Every relay station that had ever carried signals showed it where civilizations existed. Shutting down was not enough. The entity already knew where to hunt. Owen stared at the display showing the core worlds, home to hundreds of billions of people across dozens of species. The listener would reach that region in months, and nothing could stop it. Nothing conventional. But humanity had spent 2 months in silence developing unconventional ideas, and one of them might work. Prepare the Echo Protocol, Owen ordered. His second-in-command looked at him in shock. Director, that's not approved. The Council hasn't even heard the proposal. The Council is in chaos. Outer worlds are dying while they debate. We don't have time for approvals. Owen pulled up the protocol on his display. It was insane. It was desperate. It required sacrifice on a scale that made him sick to consider. But it was the only plan that might save the galaxy. The Echo Protocol was simple in concept. Create a signal so loud, so overwhelming, so impossibly attractive that the listener could not resist following it. Draw it away from the core worlds, lead it on a chase through empty space, then extinguish that signal at a location far from any inhabited system. Stranded in darkness with no breadcrumbs to follow, the problem was the bait. To create a signal loud enough to override the listener's current path, to pull it away from the prize of core worlds toward a single target, would require broadcasting power on a planetary scale. It would require a whole civilization transmitting at maximum output, announcing their location so loudly that the entire galaxy would hear. It would require Earth. Owen looked at the faces of his team, saw understanding dawn in their eyes. He pulled up a communication channel, not broadcast but carried by optical laser to a single receiving station. "Connect me to the World Council," he said quietly. "Tell them it's time to vote on our final option." The vote took 4 hours. Every nation on Earth had a say, every voice counted. Owen watched the tally boards in the command center as votes came in through secure optical channels. The question was simple: should Earth volunteer to become the bait that saved the galaxy? The results were closer than he expected. 63% in favor, 37% against. Millions of people who wanted to live, who had families and futures and dreams. But the majority chose sacrifice over watching other worlds die. Reese received the news via courier and felt something break inside his chest. He had brought this to Earth's doorstep, and now they were offering themselves to fix it. The Galactic Council's response was equally divided, with some delegates calling it heroic and others claiming it proved human instability. But none of them offered alternatives. None of their worlds volunteered instead. "We cannot accept this," Reese told Owen through an optical communication link. "Let us find another way. Let my people take the risk." Owen's face on the screen was calm, almost peaceful. "Your people didn't train for this. We did. For 2 months we've lived in silence, prepared for isolation, built systems to survive without broadcasting. We knew from the beginning this might be necessary. We chose this path when we went dark the first time." "But your entire species," Reese protested. "Your homeworld, your history. We'll survive in our colonies if this works," Owen said firmly. "Earth is one planet. Humanity is more than that. And if we do nothing, if the listener reaches the core worlds, billions die across dozen species. The math is simple." The Echo Protocol began implementation immediately. Every human on Earth was evacuated to underground shelters built during the 2 months of silence. Massive shield generators, originally designed for asteroid defense, were repurposed to protect the underground facilities from gravitational distortion. The entire surface of the planet was converted into one enormous broadcast array. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Those who still had functional observatories. Optical telescopes tracked Earth as it began to glow with electromagnetic radiation. Every frequency humanity had ever used suddenly blazed at maximum power. Radio, microwave, infrared, radar. Every transmission technology amplified and coordinated into a beacon visible across light years. Earth was screaming into the void. The listener responded within hours. Its course changed dramatically, curving away from the path to core worlds, bending toward Sol system like a moth drawn to flame. The gravitational distortions it created as it accelerated were visible on sensors across 3 star systems. It was moving faster than it ever had before, drawn by a signal so powerful it overwhelmed every other source. "It's working," Owen reported from deep beneath Earth's surface. Gravitational readings showed definite course change. "It's coming here. How long?" Reese asked from his observation post on a distant moon. 18 hours at current speed. Maybe less. "It's accelerating." Owen's voice remained steady, but Reese could hear the cost of that steadiness. "We'll maintain broadcast until it reaches Earth orbit. Then we shut down everything simultaneously. 600 broadcast stations all going dark at once. It will arrive expecting a feast and find nothing. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The listener followed signals fed on the sources. But if the source vanished while it was mid-approach, it would find empty space. Earth would be silent and shielded below ground. The entity would search briefly, then move on, having no other strong signals to follow. It would drift back into deep space, away from inhabited systems. That was the theory. Reality proved more complicated. As the listener approached, instruments detected something humanity had not seen before. It was not alone. Smaller distortions surrounded the main mass, like offspring or drones, each one capable of independent movement. The entity was not a single creature, but a swarm, or perhaps one creature with many parts. And it was learning. "New problem," one of the researchers announced, her voice tight with fear. "It's releasing scouts ahead of the main mass. They're spreading out, searching the inner system. If they find our shielded facilities, they might be able to penetrate." Owen stared at the tactical display, watching the smaller masses spread through space like searching fingers. The plan had assumed one entity, one target. But this was a predator that adapted, that learned from experience. It had hunted across the galaxy and survived by being smarter than its prey. "We need to maintain the broadcast longer than planned," Owen decided. "Keep its attention focused on the surface stations, not on searching for underground facilities. We draw it in completely, let it commit fully to the surface, then shut down. That cuts our safety margin to almost nothing," his second objected. "If those scouts get close enough before we go dark, they might detect the shelters. Then we broadcast louder." Owen's hands moved across controls, overriding safety limits on the transmission arrays. "Maximum power to all stations. Burn them out if necessary. Make the signal so loud it blinds the scouts, drowns out any other electromagnetic signatures." The surface of Earth became a torch. Energy levels exceeded design specifications by 300%. Some arrays began failing immediately, melting from their own output. But the rest held, blazing with desperate intensity. A dying star's last scream condensed into electromagnetic form. The listener came. Reese watched from his distant observation post as gravitational readings went off scale. Reality itself seemed to bend around the approaching mass. Space warped. Light curved. Time experienced subtle distortions. The entity was vast beyond measurement, existing in dimensions humanity could barely detect. And it was hungry. "All stations report ready for shutdown," Owen announced. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as they hovered over the controls. "On my mark, we go dark. 3, 2, 1 mark." Earth went silent. Every broadcast station, every transmitter, every source of electromagnetic radiation shut down simultaneously. The planet that had been screaming into space suddenly stopped, as if it had never existed. 600 underground facilities held their breath, shielded and hidden, while above them something vast and terrible arrived to feed, and found nothing but silence. The listener arrived at Earth orbit like a storm made of gravity and hunger. Reese watched through passive sensors as space itself twisted around the entity. It was larger than anything in the databases, larger than most moons, but its mass was wrong, distributed across dimensions that human mathematics could barely describe. Parts of it existed in normal space, while other parts reached through reality from somewhere else. It searched. For 6 hours, the listener swept through Earth's orbit and the surrounding space. Its scouts, the smaller masses that accompanied it, spread through the inner system like probing fingers. Gravitational pulses radiated from the main body, active sensing that distorted everything they touched. Reese could only imagine what those pulses felt like to the humans hiding underground. Reality itself bending above their heads. The entity circled Earth 3 times, moving slower with each pass. It was confused. The signal that had drawn it across the system, that blazing beacon of electromagnetic energy, had vanished. The prey had been here. The prey had called out. Where had it gone? Inside the deepest shelter, Owen monitored the gravitational readings and prayed to gods he did not believe in. The shielding was holding, but barely. Each gravitational pulse from the listener sent tremors through the rock above them. Dust fell from the ceiling. Support beams creaked. And somewhere on level 6, a child was crying, muffled by their mother's hands. It's still searching, one of the researchers whispered, as if speaking too loudly might give them away. It knows something is here. The shielding is masking our electromagnetic signatures, Owen said, more confident than he felt. It can't find us. It just needs to give up and move on. But the listener did not give up easily. It had hunted across the galaxy, consumed civilizations that tried to hide or flee. It had learned patience. It settled into a slow orbit around Earth, searching continuously, its scouts probing every anomaly, every gravitational variance. Anything that might indicate hidden prey. Hours became days. The humans underground lived in enforced silence, speaking only in whispers, moving carefully to avoid creating detectable vibrations. They rationed everything: power, water, food, hope. Children asked when they could go outside. Adults had no answers. On the 4th day, the listener did something unexpected. It began to leave, drifting slowly outward from Earth. Owen watched the gravitational readings with cautious relief. The entity had given up. It was moving away, searching for other signals, other prey. The plan had worked. Then the readings spiked. The listener had not left. It had been testing, watching to see if prey would emerge, thinking the threat had passed. When nothing appeared, it truly did begin to depart, accelerating outward. But it left 2 scouts behind, smaller masses that continued searching Earth's orbit. Watchers, guards, ensuring nothing emerged. Clever, Owen whispered. It's learning to anticipate. It knows prey hides. How long will they stay? Reese asked through the optical communication link. Unknown. Days? Weeks? We can't outlast them forever. We have supplies for 6 months maximum underground. And if we ever broadcast again, if we ever come out of hiding while those scouts are watching, it will return. The galaxy waited. Other worlds that had gone dark remained silent, watching to see if Earth's sacrifice would work. If the listener moved on, if it drifted back into deep space away from inhabited systems, then the blackout protocol would become permanent policy. Civilizations would learn to operate in silence, to communicate optically or through physical couriers, to stop screaming into the void. But if the listener stayed, if it learned to find prey even in silence, then no hiding place would be safe. 17 days after Earth went dark, the scouts finally departed. They drifted outward, following the main mass that had already moved beyond the outer system. Gravitational readings showed the listener heading toward the galactic rim, tracking ancient signals from civilizations long extinct, searching for prey that still announced itself. Owen emerged from underground, 6 hours after the last scout disappeared from sensors. He stood on the surface for the first time in weeks, breathing air that tasted like freedom. Around him, the broadcast arrays lay in ruins, melted or broken from their desperate final transmission. The planet was scarred but alive. Reese landed a shuttle nearby. The Quellan investigator looked older somehow, burdened by what he had witnessed. It worked, he said simply. You saved everyone. We bought time, Owen corrected. The listener is still out there. There are probably others. And now we know the truth about the universe we live in. There are predators in the dark. Big ones. What will humanity do now? Owen looked up at the sky, at stars that suddenly seemed less welcoming than they once had. We'll rebuild. We'll resume communication with our colonies using short-range optical systems. We'll teach the galaxy how to survive in silence. And we'll watch the darkness, Because now we know what hunts there. The message Owen sent to the Galactic Council was delivered by courier, written on physical media that would never broadcast. It was simple. Earth's final transmission was not a distress call. It was a warning. We showed you that survival requires silence. We proved that sacrifice can save billions. The galaxy is darker now, quieter, and perhaps that is how it must remain. Not forever, but until we learn to defend ourselves against predators we did not know existed. We went silent to protect you. We screamed to save you. Now we teach you to whisper. The galaxy changed. Communication networks were rebuilt around optical relays and physical couriers. Civilizations learned to operate without constant broadcast. It was slower, less convenient, isolating in ways that no one liked. But it was survival. And Earth, the world that had gone dark to warn others, became known as the silent teacher. The species that once broadcast louder than anyone else now showed the wisdom of knowing when to be quiet. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was not technology or art or culture. It was the lesson that sometimes the greatest courage is accepting silence, that survival requires sacrifice, and that protecting strangers is worth any cost. The listener moved through deep space, following ancient signals toward the galactic edge. Behind it, civilizations held their breath and waited. And they survived, because one species learned to be quiet and taught everyone else the price of noise.